Okay, so, good morning.
Good morning.
It's good to see winter is finally here-ish. Getting chilly finally. We are going to embark on the strangest Christmas sermon series ever. Don't know if I know how to define it. So just kind of bear with me as we kind of work through this because it's going to be kind of a different approach. Those of you guys who check out the Book of Faces, so just to let you know, we'll be talking about things over the next few weeks that are pertinent to this church and pertinent to where we're at and what's happening currently. You might say, "Hey, it's Christmas," but hey, it's now. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at some of our church history. I don't really know. I didn't make the slide, but I don't really know what the whole point of 10 to 1 is, but probably means something. Anyway, if you take a look at, right? 10 to 1? So,
my Illuminati game.
that's right. I didn't know. Yeah, if it's some kind of code, let me know afterwards, and I'll change the slide for next week, so as to not perpetuate the myth. So, we've been around for a while now. It's hard to believe. So I had this crazy thought. So I was looking at our refrigerator, the outside, and it's a start. It's a start. Leave the door closed. But I was looking at our refrigerator last week, and we do this thing we quit buying sports pictures, okay? Just because we have so many, right? I mean, you're taking snapshots with your cell phones, and people are giving you pictures. So one of our traditions is whenever they do the formal, precious moments, Olin Mills, photo shoot with the kids, is we buy refrigerator magnets and buttons, okay? And so our refrigerator is this incredible timeline of our child, our oldest for the most part right now, because Travis is mostly still little dude pictures, but you can watch this metamorphosis with Marcus from this little bitty boy to this obnoxious teenager as it sort of goes around the fridge, soon to be a really annoying adult. So that'll go around the other side when he does his like college pictures with his college girlfriend. We'll make sure we get him a magnet. Anyway, so but you can look at this and it was funny because it was like you can remember all these little nuances of Marcus and Travis have this one point in time where I can't tell which one's which. It's a very small window, but there really was a window with the two of them. Or if you look at the pictures and you go, like the only way I can figure it out is by the actual uniform. So Marcus wore the uniforms that were old school. Travis's uniforms are more new school. So it's like it's able to kind of figure this out. Anyway, so Marcus has this thing with his hair when he's a kid, where he wears his hat, and then he had this one strand of hair that just does this in every picture. It is so funny. And then all of a sudden, you could tell when he becomes self-aware, now the smile's better, the look is tougher, all of a sudden the little, hair is gone. And so, it's one of my favorite things that we do. We don't have a lot of that kind of stuff, but that's one of the things that we do. It's kind of our refrigerator has turned into this timeline. And one of the things that I was associating with the timeline as I'm looking at it is the idea that this is the only church he's really ever known. I know he was around a few minutes beforehand, but and at Travis, this is the only church he's in. And so I was thinking about how far back the early years go, and I was thinking about sort of where we started, where we've been, kind of going through a lot of the stuff, and I was thinking about us starting downtown. Some of you remember that, some of you don't. We met in this gigantor space that had 8 parking spaces. It was the weirdest thing, right? It was huge. It was like 9 million square feet and like 8 parking spaces. And they were out back in an alley next to like a crack distributorship. And it's true. If you were there, it was odd. Anyway, wow, way to bring it down. Way to ruin it, Matt. Anyway, so we went through this whole thing, and we kind of got the ball rolling, and we kind of came out of an odd situation, and it was an odd situation that was sort of met with some scrutiny by some people, and it was met with praise by others, and it was, for a lot of you guys who weren't there, I'm not going to indulge you in too many details, but it kind of was an odd start. It was an idea that I think was sort of put forth initially by God through a lot of people, and then that idea has sort of been chucked by people in spite of God, and then ultimately people decided in the end that we should totally plant this church because we need to, or else things are going to go nuclear at Mill Creek Church. And you know, we've relived that a lot, and we've gone over it a lot, and I've felt for a long time that, you know, in all honesty, I said my piece on the, you know, I asked for forgiveness, and I've stood on the letter of the law since day one, and felt that I achieved the letter of the law, and here in America, dang it, that's all that matters. It's true. You know, but I have been challenged a lot the last couple of years, especially with trying to figure out, like, as we kind of go through this, you know, we kind of got into the middle years of our church, right? The middle years were when we went to Dry Creek, and that was horrific. And then we were totally welcomed with open arms and holy kisses, and then run out of town with pitchforks and fire. And it's true, if you were there. And it was weird, and I couldn't explain it. I mean, what turned and what happened, I don't know. You know, we were downtown, and when we started, we had, you know, we were running 80, you know, 70 to 80 people. We had people come and check it out naturally, and a lot of stuff early on. And it was sort of like, then all of a sudden that soured within about 6 minutes. And then we went to Dry Creek, and it was like holy kisses and pitchforks within about 6 minutes. And then we went over to California Avenue School, which I enjoyed. You know, but the setting up and tearing down the group was a lot of fun. And then we had this opportunity that kind of brings us into the recent years. And that brings us into this facility here, which was sort of brought in through a relationship with, that sort of developed kind of out of nowhere with somebody whose father was probably more known to us than he was actually. And kind of brought us into this, and we started to feel like, hey, this is it. We finally have, you know, the journey's over. You know, we finally have a home, you know. And things got off to a good start here, but then all of a sudden we started running into just stuff again. And then we had a huge DNA hit last year with Gabe and Angie listening to the voice of Satan. Drew and Molly obviously following a demon, and a number of other people who seemed to leave all at the same time, and left us in kind of an odd spot. But you know, we felt confident, but that brought us to a place where last January I had a conversation with the church over a number of weeks about how we are in a situation where we had to feel and answer a challenge of growth and, you know, forward thinking and moving forward and energy, and, you know, starting to see where those things really, really matter. And I felt like I did my best, you know, in my own, you know, inadequacies and sometimes poor communication to explain kind of where we were at. And I felt like kind of as the year went on, you know, you start to run into a lot of things. You start to, the tea leaves become, you know, you're always trying to read them, you know. And it kind of has brought the council, who absolutely loves this church and serves it faithfully, to a place of discussion a few months back. And it put us in a place where we had to change things financially to continue on and not run ourselves into the ground. We had to make some cuts. We had to do a lot of different things. But it kind of put us into a discussion about where we're at. And so one of the things that has been something that's sort of been, you know, and I'll talk a little bit about this at the end. I promise I'm not going to belabor the point today too much. But it brought us into a place of really looking at okay, so, for me, one of my biggest things has always been about this church is that either we're poorly named or we're aptly named. Like, I couldn't decide. And because to me, a journey is a destination of something, right? To me, if you're going to go on a journey, you're going somewhere, right? I mean, it's okay to go on a walkabout, what is that, Crocodile Dundee? I mean, it's okay to just wander and spin around in a circle and come home, but the journey has a purpose, and I kept looking back and I kept thinking, because when I look back at our history and all I ever see is roadblocks, which is unfair, because we've had a lot of tremendous successes and a lot of great things, and I know for my family, this church has provided a huge wealth of relationship and positives and community. And so for me, it's, you can include all those things, but for me, I always go back to, and I'm not going to bore you with, but I can sit here and go through, because my memory is pretty good. I try to use it sometimes to, I don't remember, and sometimes I don't, and I think everybody who knows me really well knows my memory is really good, and so when I say I don't remember, a lot of people think I'm lying. A lot of times though, at this point, you push 3 things in the front, 3 things got to go out the back, right? But one of the things I can remember well is timelines, and stats. I was a baseball stat junkie when I was a kid, right? And, I can go through all these moments where I was like, oh, thank you, Jesus. And then, wait, what? And then, okay, now you're going to provide this door. Okay, cool. God, thank you. And then, wait, no, you shut it. Oh, wait, now you open this one. Oh, wait, now you shut it. Oh, wait, now you open this one. And now you shut it. Wait, huh? What? And then finally we get to that. And I got to thinking a lot about that. And as I was thinking about this week, it's not weird for us to be like that. When you read Luke 2, the Bible says, while they were there, the time came for the baby to be born. She gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloths, placed him in a manger because there was no guest room for them in the inn. So here comes Jesus. I know we gave birth to him 3 weeks early, just deal with it. Okay? And so here comes Jesus, right? He's laying here. So then you go, okay, so it's obvious who he is, right? We read it, we go, oh, praise you, Jesus. The Messiah was born and he was laid in a manger and all these things. But when you start looking at what other people were thinking as they kind of went through the timeline, right then and there, so here come the wise dudes, right? So they come along, and who are they looking for? They say, where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? So they think he's what?
Grown up.
They think he's grown up. They think he's a king. Okay, so we get king, right? Then you got the blind men, right? 2 blind men, says Jesus went on from there, and 2 blind men followed him and called out, and they said, have mercy on us, son of David. So now we read that first one and we see Jesus, right? We see little baby Jesus in his golden diapers and the Messiah and the, all those things. But then right off the bat, somebody sees him as king. And then just a few chapters later, it's son of David. Now these are all monikers of esteem. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that these are bad. But then you read in John 3, right, 16, one of the most famous verses that we, at football games. It says, for God so loved the world that he gave his one and only son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish. So John, when he writes his gospel, wants to make sure early on in the 3rd chapter that we know who Jesus was. Jesus was the Messiah. Right? He wants us to know, because there's a lot of confusion. If we read John 7, it says, when the Messiah comes, he will perform more signs than this guy. So Jesus is working miracles. Right? I mean, he's doing some cool stuff. I don't know how many miracles you guys have been around. I myself, not many. But if I'm standing there and some guy walks up to a blind dude, spits in some dirt, rubs a little mud, and he can see, at that point I'm not waiting for whatever the good thing is next. Right? I'm not going to go, well, that's not bad. Not bad. But when the real Messiah comes, imagine the stuff that he's going to do. So we see in Jesus, we see this birth. We go back to Christmas and we think, oh, there he is. But then right off the bat, we see all of this confusion. First, he's a king. Then he's the son of David. John's like, hey, real quick, just so everybody knows, he's here to save everybody. Well, the problem is that this is the issue. So for the Jewish establishment, the issue with Jesus wasn't that he wasn't a good dude. The issue with Jesus wasn't that he wasn't doing awesome stuff. The issue with Jesus is ultimately he wasn't what they wanted. Ultimately, he wasn't who they thought the Messiah would be. So they said things like this: when the Messiah comes, that's going to be awesome. That's going to be fantastic. That's going to be really impressive. Imagine how many blind guys' eyes he's going to spit in then, right? They had a whole different attitude. But then you go all the way to the end, right? I know I'm skipping the Easter. This is really messing people up, right? Because Jesus hasn't even...
I don't even have Christmas.
I know. And now I got to go buy Cadbury eggs? What? It says, when the centurion, and those with him regarding Jesus saw the earthquake and said what had happened, they were terrified and exclaimed. So the first guy to really get who he is a nobody. A guy we don't even have a really good name of. His name? Centurion. It's a great name, by the way. I'm all for it. But the first guy to see through all of the crapola. I was going to say something. Crapola. Okay. I was going to say that, but I didn't. So crapola was a centurion. So the centurion has no idea who Jesus is, has no idea what the important role the Messiah plays is, has no idea. But he gets it because he sees how it works. And, first of all, they knew Jesus was something. What that something was, they didn't know. They knew he was something. King, son of David, they call him a prophet at one point, right? All of those things are good things. All of those things are important things. All of those things have value, but none of those things were Jesus, right? None of them. And even to the point to where he's questioned and he says, are you who they say you are? And he goes, does it matter? The answer is yes, but does it matter? And so you have this thing, and they knew he was special, but the problem was the Jews had one particular view on Jesus, or on the Messiah, sorry. And that view was he would lead Israel back to prominence. That was their qualifier for who Jesus was. The Messiah had to be a political value. The Messiah had to be a warrior. The Messiah was going to restore God's rightful place to the children of Israel, which is on the top of the mountain, is what he was going to do. Jesus comes along and does all this amazing stuff. I mean, he's healing people, saving people, hanging out with people, drinking with people, making liquor. I mean, he's doing all of these incredible things. Wild, amazing things. But ultimately, their assumption of what he was in order for him to be successful amongst them was not fulfilled. So they didn't see the value in Jesus. They discard Jesus, right? I mean, let's be honest. If you're going to crucify somebody and bury somebody, that's the ultimate in unnecessary. And so we run into this kind of interesting conundrum in that how do you define for those people what you see? So you're stepping back and you're saying one person saw him as king. Now, why did they see him as king? Because the star, they were given this vision, he was the king. What did Mary see him as? Son, right? I mean, I can't imagine as awesome as the prophecy might have been initially. I can't imagine Mary saw him as anything different than son, right? So Mary sees him as son, king. The first group sees him as son of David, which, by the way, great, moniker to run with, right? I mean, if someone said, hey, you remind me a lot of Abraham Lincoln, I'd be like, well, thank you, right? I wouldn't go, shh, so much better than that guy, right? No, but he's given this tremendous lineage, and then some see him as prophet, which is great, because they see him as a conduit, as a voice of God. But there's all of these different things where everybody's looking at the same Messiah. Everybody sees him differently, and then along comes this guy, this nobody, this dude who was standing there watching his buddies barter for his clothing. And all this stuff happens, and really not that impressive of stuff. An earthquake, some wind, a little darkness. That's like every weekend in California, right? Right? We got some wind somewhere, a little darkness, and an earthquake. But yet he can see in those little bitty things exactly who Jesus was. Meanwhile, you've got Pharisees watching his every move who have no idea. You've got leaders watching his every move. You've got his best friend who has no idea. Right? Peter's trying to stop him from dying all the time. Peter has no idea. His closest confidants have no clue. Yet here's this guy who has no basis in who God is, who has no basis in Jewish understanding, standing there looking up and going, all it took was a little wind, a little earthquake, and I'm seeing some Jesus here. Right? So you run into this, as sure as they were he was something, they never really understood, a lot of them never, but most of them until later, that he was of value. And he was the Messiah. So you see that it's interesting from a biblical perspective. It's not unprecedented to have some confusion about what you see. And I know for me, going back to what I talked about at the beginning, is we start running into, how do you understand what you're seeing? Okay? How do you understand the things that you're seeing and what to do about it? And that's why, it's important that we bring a lot of these things to ourselves as the church, because it's not weird to see things differently. It's not weird to have a different perspective. It's also not weird for everybody to be wrong. Right? Because we learn that. Right? If you need me to go walk you back through what I just did, I'll do that later. But some things that are important for us to understand is that our numbers have been declining for quite a while. Now we have little pockets of time where we do pretty well. But we've seen our numbers decline. We've seen the consistency of our attendees decline, right? We've seen our finances begin to become an issue, and we're running into the fact that our lease is up in 3 months. Oops, and I just totally, all right, I totally thought I deleted that. So we start running into a lot of these facts of what we're seeing and where we're at, and I want you guys to understand the heart of the council here at the church and mine, and the things that we've been talking about. We've been facing a lot of this for quite some time. The challenge last year was kind of put forth that, look, the dark clouds on the horizon were discussed, right? They were out there. And for some reason, whatever that reason is, we didn't meet the challenge. But I want to say something I think is very important. We're a great church. I love the people here. You guys are as much a part of my family as anyone I'm not blood related to. And even then, more than some of them. It's true. We are a great church, but we are reaching a point where we have begun to become really what is genuinely defined as a dying church. Okay? We are losing the battle of attrition rather heartedly at this point. And it creates a tough situation. Now, Jesus was born into the darkest of times, right? If you ever want to read about the intertestamental period of the Bible, you learn that he was born into what was understood to be sort of the darkest. We don't have much. It's the dark ages of the Bible for the most part. You can read the Maccabees, you can read some of the intertestamental works. But there was really a long period of time where it seemed like God wasn't doing much. I know that's a horrible way to say it because it's not true, but that's as far as it's recorded. We have kind of become at this place. We see the things that are on the very near horizon. We also see the fact that anything that we do from here on out requires a commitment that I'm not sure we're going to meet. Requires a long-term agreement that God has been faithful up till now. We have done it. We don't owe. We don't have debt. But at the same time, we also see a lot of warning signs in terms of anything beyond that lease coming up in February. And we have been talking at length about what to do. And trust me when I say no one has ever put forth it may be time to close the church with any sort of peace. We struggle with it. But that's one of the reasons we're having this conversation now, to put this forth now, the time frame that we have now to discuss it, because we've sort of we're at that place. And so we sit there and say, okay, well, that's all great, sounds good, now what do we do? Right? Okay, do I have any say so? I'm sure many of you are thinking in your heads, what about me? What about my input? What about us? What about where we're at? What about whatever. Okay, so let me get on this. Like I said, this is only the first discussion. You have many more of these horrible Sundays to come to. First of all, okay, let me give you a couple things, answers I wish I had. Okay, everybody good with this?
Yeah.
So these are answers I wish I had. All right, so here we go. So this question, why didn't we grow? Ooh, man, I wish I had that answer. I do. I think about that. I have thought about this question more than, probably more than any question in my life more than anything in my life for the last 8 years. Okay? I wish I had. Second one, what missteps on my part have led us to this place in this outcome? I wish I knew which ones I could really undo, because I have a lot of them. I think about, oh man, I wish I'd been more adamant about this. I wish I'd have been less impressionable by leaders in my life about this. I wish, we go all the way back to, discussing some of the things that are very roots, and I'm like, man alive, I wish I would have, not let that happen, or yelled louder, or yelled less, in some cases. I wish I would have said no, or I wish I would have said yes. I think that stuff all the time, but then again, hindsight's easy, right? Hindsight's cake. I have not made one mistake in hindsight, right? It's just not hard, when you're looking back on it, you're like, I should have went right? Like you don't look at it and go, no, that probably been wrong. No, you look at it and right? So the missteps on my part that led us to this place, very, 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 very important, okay? Another one is there anything I can do to change it? I think that all the time. The reality is, I'm a terrestrial person, right? I'm here. This is what you got. I don't have any celestial skills, right? I have shortcomings, but it's like you step back and go, okay, so what can I do to change it? What can I do? And this has probably been the primary focus for me personally during this whole time. That was weird. Anybody else just see the screen flash? Never mind, just me. All right. Slow down. Enough of that. Is there anything else I can do to change it? Is there anything I can do? A big one, because it took me a while to type this one, especially when I type with these 2 fingers. In spite of all the things I see and the decisions we've made recently, is there something about what God is doing in this moment I'm missing? All right? I always look. This is not an abnormal thought for me. I think this in all kinds of stuff. I was trying to share, what they were thinking about in terms of the, for the people that met Jesus, right, from birth to adolescence to adulthood, and all those tea leaves that they're thinking. you know. And I'm sure that when it all came to an end, when you know, when Peter gets called out of the boat, and all of a sudden it's sort of, you know, like all the stuff he could have done, you know, or all the things. It's like, how did I miss that, right? Anybody ever do that? It's like, how did I miss that? You know, and you start thinking these things through, and you start thinking, okay, you know, so I try to always think, it's like, okay, God, so, you know, one of my favorite games to play is, or God means this, right? I mean, everybody, well, you know what God's probably doing by pushing here is he wants you to go there, right? Everybody ever hear that, right? God's doing that because he wants you to go there. But my attitude, because I'm so contrarian, has always been, or he's pushing so that I push back, and thus he knows that I'm committed to this direction, right? And everybody goes, God would never do that. I'm like, oh, really? Right? My favorite thing when people say God would never do that is always to go, let's open our Old Testament, right? And so I've always been like that, contrarian. So I look at this, and I'll be honest with you. To me, there's a right decision here. Okay? You know, and I feel like I'm, you know, going to make that clear. You know, but to me, there's a right decision. But it doesn't mean it's the decision. And it doesn't mean that my clarity on right decision means it's the right decision either. Because I'm a contrarian. You know, and so for me, it's like, I always try to think about, what am I missing, okay? It's like, God, are you pushing me to the brink? Are there things that you want me to do here? Are there steps that you're not going to allow us to move forward until those steps are taken? Are there decisions to be made that will not allow? Get very spiritual here. Okay, so everybody just stretch out. Okay? Are there things that you need to do before blessing will be allowed? You know, because if blessing isn't being allowed, what does that mean? You're under a curse. Good everyone. After just 8 years. Still working on that. You know, but it's so you start talking about those things, and you're going back and forth, and you're leveraging all these things. It's good to see that my teaching has made a dent. You guys were like, you know, so you start getting through. So, you know, obviously some of that I'm going to get into here as I deal with my personal approach. So, first one, praying and listening as we continue to move forward. Good, got that out of the way. Second, refusing the moniker of failure. This is something I have to do. This is not a failure to me. And I don't care if somebody wants to call it a failure, you can call it whatever you want. You can call it dingleberry for all I care. You guys know what that is, right?
That's a verse.
Huh?
That's a verse.
Yeah. Yeah, you can call it, sorry. Anyway, you can call it whatever you want. But, I gotta say that, it's gonna come up later when I get home. It was really pretty okay until the dingleberry comes.
You won't say crap, but you'll say
I know, kind of
That's gonna come up too,
Inappropriate
don't
word.
worry. Don't worry about that one.
It's Christmas. Probably would have been too soon for the joke I almost made there. All right. Wait a couple weeks. I'm just gonna let her fly. All right. So refusing. You guys might want to bring your cameras. No. So refusing the moniker. No video recording. Refusing the moniker of failure. This is a big one for me. Because I think for me, anytime I struggle with success that doesn't ultimately end in how I perceive victory. You know, a couple of years ago, I had a football team that went 9-1 during the regular season, lost in the playoffs. I have completely thrown that team out of my head. They were terrible. Right? Because I don't do well with successes that aren't the success. You know, and so I struggle. That year is a failure to me. I actually had a conversation about that team yesterday with a guy for like 10 minutes who was a coach against the team that beat me. He was coaching for the team that beat them, not me. I didn't lose. And we had this conversation. I was like, I don't want to talk about this team. Why do you bring this team up? He goes, they were really good. I'm like, no, they weren't. Right? Because in my head, that's not a success. Except that, you know, I have to step back and say, I am not going to accept in this decision-making process that goes into it at all. Okay? just not. So if you're going to bring it up, enjoy it. Next thing, in terms of my approach, and I wrote this one earlier, but talking with Foursquare. We have a church governing body that needs to be aware of what we have going on. You know, I've talked with them enough, but not enough. But that's my personal approach. I'm going to go sit down with Bob Irwin on Tuesday. Now, Bob's pastor of Mill Creek Church, and I feel like in order for me to genuinely be able to step back when all is said and done, regardless of when that is, that this is something that needs to take place. This is something that I have fought against under the letter of the law for a long time. I followed it, get off my back, right? Only I would be a fool to not sit down and just hug it out. I'm just kidding. You guys all got a little weird there, so no, we're not gonna hug. Right? Dang it! Now that I said it, God's gonna make me hug. Why are you opening your mouth at? Meanwhile, it'll be like, that's where the dingleberry comes. That's a little sense of humor. But no, I'm just going to go sit down with Bob and make sure that, you know, that there has been reconciliation, there's repentance and a restoration of what needs to take place. These are all things I'm going to do in the meantime while I allow things to go. I'm going to pray for, probably not get, but validation and decision making. I like validation. Validation is important. Okay? It just is. And before I rubber stamp anything, I need that. Second, I'm going to enjoy our gatherings. I just am. You know, for most of you, no, I don't know, yeah, probably still most of you. You've been with us really since Jesus was here, right? I mean, we all stood at the cross together and declared him the Son of God and started a church. You know, we've been around a while. And regardless of what I know about what I know for the next few months, it doesn't matter. You know, I'm going to have a good time. I had a good time talking this morning. I could tell there was some tension with the people who were in the know, but I'm going to have a good time. And there's a really good chance, if God does not change our direction rather abruptly in the next short period of time, you're going to get one really honest sermon at some point. And it's going to be glorious. We're going to dismiss the kids. That's right. You think Dingleberry's bad. You might want to invite some folks. That's what it is. Anyway, all right. So what we can do, now we, I have generically titled as we, but mostly mean you. All right. Hey, I gave you my list. If you want to trade, you holler. Okay? You guys are like, no, those aren't bad. I'll take those. I don't even know who Bob is. Bob, I'll talk to him. All right. So here's what we can do in the now. By we, I mean you. Pray with your families. Yes, that's the right word. Pray with your families. What for? In terms of anything specific, I would say nothing. I would say just pray for your church. Pray for the decisions that have to be made. Pray that we see what we need to see, understand what we need to understand, change what we, need to change, embrace what we need to embrace, understand what we need to understand, and do what we have to do. Did you get all those? Okay. Chris recorded it. Second, perhaps God has a reveal, I like the word reveal, for you in the midst of this that can help guide us. God does not just speak through, people who have the official moniker of God's speaking. I had a phenomenal conversation with the youth last week at the school because we were talking about prophets. And I said, what's a prophet? And all the kids were like, people who tell the future. Right? And I was like, no. And they're like, but they do. And I said, that's fine. I, can technically lift things. It does not make me an Olympic lifter. Occasionally I lift things. Occasionally I lift heavy things. It does not make me world's strongest man. And I said, what is a prophet? So we got to talking. And finally they understood he's somebody who has the voice, the mouthpiece, right, of God. You're going to say things. And they had to have relevance, right? Everything that's said in Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, by the Pastor Lamentations, by all of those people, is what? It's relevant. If I walk up to you and I go, listen, God has a word for you guys, okay? In 400 years, America will be enslaved by Canada. Is that going to change any of your lives? No, you're going to be like, how long? Okay, great. Right? You would all go home and get pizza, take a nap, and watch some football. None of you would go, what are you doing? I'm arming myself for the great Mountie invasion of 25-48. It doesn't, I did the math wrong. 20-48, 24-48, whatever. Anyway, now I'm not a prophet. Canada's not coming now. Maybe I meant 248 today. Anyway. So but the idea is that none of that would have mattered. It had to mean something then. And so I asked them a question. I said, are prophets still around today? And every kid goes, no. And I went, and then one kid, the kid who has the thing, in my class, he pushes everything on me. And he goes, do you? And I went, I grew up Pentecostal. Yes. You can't go to church without a prophet, right? Pastor, he'll talk, but there's always some 60-year-old lady, right? I'm not joking. 70-year-old lady somewhere in this area here. So one of you's going to have to pick up this role. It's on you, John. Who says, "Yea, my people, I say unto thee," every Sunday, and sometimes it's in tongues, and sometimes it's. I do love how God only speaks through King James, but because there's always these and thous, right? The Lord has brought thou forth. Speaking King James, limited. But it's like, I believe in prophets, and I believe that part of that is everybody has prophet abilities. That would be a totally different statement at a business meeting. Everybody has prophet skills. Okay? Everybody. Anybody can speak on behalf of God. And so for me, it's like, pray that God can reveal to you in the midst of this process. Avoid nostalgia. That is the worst reason to make a decision. But I do accept this. I spent 12 hours in a board meeting yesterday with people who could not escape nostalgia. And I wanted to put a fork through my eyeball. I'm not joking. I have no problem with nostalgia, but when it becomes your primary mechanism for making decisions, this is the reason that the Jews couldn't accept Jesus. Because the nostalgia of Israel being the most important country in the world is what drove their understanding of the Messiah. The fact that he came to save everybody made no ding-dang sense. Because he was here to make Israel prominent again. And so to me, it's like, be careful to say God would never want us to do something like call it a day. Because it hurts. Because I don't know what I'll do. How could I continue serving God if my church is no longer here in a few weeks? How can I? Those are nostalgia. What about the time that, I can't walk through here without nostalgia. I remember picking up the chairs, right? I remember the debacle that is our stage. I say debacle, stage. I remember that. That backdrop was some serious work. And we got smart on the side too. The middle one, we were stupid. Because when you build it on the ground and lift it, that don't look like much. That's heavy. Right? Side two, we nailed it.
Yeah.
Figuratively and metaphorically. And literally. Anyway, but I remember Drew swearing to me that he could make screens out of shower curtains. Those are shower curtains, folks, if you don't know that.
Can't be.
Huh?
Can't be.
He swore to me I can make shower curtains and just HD screens. And I went, okay, Drew, I appreciate some of the stupid things you've come up with over the years. There's no way. Bling. I mean, you realize, folks, you've been sitting in church here 3 years? Staring at shower curtains on Sunday mornings. Right? I get nostalgia. I really do. Our first big purchase as a church, okay, is hanging over your head. Larry Weber donated, was it $1,800? $2,000, right? Right off the bat to buy lights and those projectors. We've gotten a lot. You're welcome. We have gotten a lot of distance out of this. Right? Banners designed by Gabe so that I could do what Foursquare required me to do without being annoyed by it. Right? Those street signs that Chris has turned into some kind of thing back there with his little boards and his arrows. I mean, you guys, if you want nostalgia, I got it. I can't walk through here without having something. I also look at some of the purchases where I was warned. I don't think we need that. Shut up, we totally need it. Now it's in the closet. I also know what's buried under the stage. So does John, though. There's a lot of stuff under the stage. Right? It's the closet, your kid's room. Room's clean. Where did everything go? Nowhere. You cleaned it up, just like you asked. Can you see it? Nope. Right? I understand. But it can't be a part of what we think at this point. Because we're always going to have that. Always. One of the conversations we had in the council meeting was, hey, this is the only time we see each other. Is at church. And the council, we've known each other forever. Except Steve. Steve's the new guy. He's only been here for like 8 years. I knew Steve a lot longer than Steve's been in church, though. We used to hang out at Starbucks. Kind of. But it's like, I remember all that. So it's okay, I get it. It's difficult. It is. Because everything in here reminds me of somebody. Couldn't care less about the chairs. Don't even like the church name. There's a lot of things I don't care for. But everything in here reminds me of somebody. Right? I get that it's difficult, and I'm not asking you to not be okay with it being difficult. But as you're praying, you got to step back and just say, but it's okay to say I don't know. That's what I've been saying. Ask the council. That's my answer to everyone. What should we do? I don't know. Where should we go? I don't know. I really just genuinely have no idea. I know what the obvious decision is. And it just is. The obvious decision is to step back and say, we're a dying church, we're struggling along as is, we've cut, we've skimped, the lease is up in a few months, end of February. The obvious decision is to say goodbye. And I think that's hard. But I don't know that that's ultimately the decision. That's just how it feels right now. But it's the right decision right now. And so, part of me is gathering and celebrating and, being okay with prophet moments and listening to what God has to say and listening to what God wants to do and working through all of those things. But at the same time, don't let the opportunity to gather and spend time together be ruined by nostalgia either. I'm not. I'm here until nobody else shows up at this point, or until Joe locks the door. Doesn't have a key. Oh wow, my bad. We'll see how long we can run this free lease thing. Church squatters. I don't think that's gonna be a good idea. That might get us in trouble. I I promise I will still do a Christmassy sermon, and we'll feel good, and we'll sing Christmas songs.
Why would we do that this year?
I'm trying everything. We're pulling out all the stops at this point. Maybe God hasn't really allowed us to grow because I'm not a joy to the world guy. I don't know. He's like, I know how you feel about Christmas carols. I wasn't born in a manger for nothing, buddy. So that's my request to you guys. We'll talk more about it next week, but I want to give you time to think about it, and that's why we have the amount of time we still have to spend time thinking about it and talking about it and praying about it without it being something that needs to have an attitude of finality at this point today. So I am available to thanks, Steve. I'm available to talk if any of you would like to set up an opportunity to go sit down, have some coffee. Evenings, my son plays basketball, but if I miss it. But if any of you want to chat, talk, divulge some phenomenally divine insider input you might have, that would be also exceptional, and I would love to hear it. I'm going to do what I'm going to do, though. I gave you my list. Actually, I would request you guys pray for those things as we move forward. But I think that's it. It's not the most sermon-y sermon. But at this point, it's kind of how I see it. And like Jesus, maybe I see it wrong. But it's how I see it. Okay? So with that being said, we are obviously still, still a church, is still moving forward. So it's going to seem oddly self-serving at this point, but we're going to go ahead and receive our offering this morning. Doesn't really work well after a sermon like that. But I apologize for that.
Good thing I donated on my way.
Yeah, that's right, because at this point we're withholding. So, all right, so let's pray. Father, we just thank you so much for this beautiful day. And God, as we sort of enter the next few months with an understanding, I don't know how else to say it, of kind of what the ultimate destination is here for the journey. God, I also know that I think that Roman soldier showed up that morning just to crucify a Jew and didn't really have an idea that at the end of that he would see the Messiah. And so Peter got up and went fishing to catch fish and ended up, when he thought it was over, meeting the Messiah. So God, I just pray right now that as we kind of go through this, whatever it is this morning that we've gotten up to, whether it's to go fishing or to go about our business, God, I don't know what the end of the day holds. But God, it could hold for all of us enlightenment. It could hold for all of us direction. It could hold for all of us an understanding. So God, right now I pray for that. I pray for each family in this church, those who aren't here this morning, those who will be with us here next week or whatever. God, I just pray right now that you be with them in their prayers, and that you be with them in their discussion. You be with them in their sharing as a family. God, I pray for, I know for me, I just pray that for the things, my action steps that I'm going to take. I pray for meeting with Bob on Tuesday. And God, just for a sit down and a time to share, and I pray for, reconciliation where there needs to be some. God, I pray for all of these things, God, and I know that you have all of us just firmly in your grasp, and that this isn't about salvation or our continued walk in you. This is just simply about us, as a community and us as a family. So God, I pray for that as we look into the next couple of weeks, and as we do our best to just relax and enjoy the Christmas season. We pray for all this in your tremendous and mighty name.